this equipment is very good. It's comparable to the networks. It's really good equipment, and everybody. And okay, I just need 3 seconds to air. That's
5, 4,
really
3, 2, 1.
Welcome very, very much to Conversation. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program a gentleman, doctor, a PhD, Harry Franqui-Rivera, and he's a public intellectual and a blogger, and he's also very familiar with the country of Puerto Rico and the Latin American scene. And I congratulate you on becoming a professor at CUNY, where you are, and welcome aboard the good ship Chandler here. We're going to talk about Puerto Rico and so forth, and I'm glad we could put this together. And I know we got to move fast because you have a very important appointment with your son this afternoon that we don't want you to miss. But welcome to the set.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Harold.
My good pleasure. Share your background. You're Puerto Rican, apparently, originally, and share your background. Born and raised, a little bit educated.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I attended the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez campus, and halfway through it, I joined the Army and then came back and finished my BA, and then I moved to the continental United States to do a master's in military history at Temple University. And
Temple, is that in Philadelphia?
Temple University in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
yes.
right. Good school, yeah.
It's a pretty good school.
Yeah, who did you study with there?
Dr. Irwin, Richard Immerman, Russell F. Whiteley, who is a legend in military history. Really good people there.
And you had a penchant for the military, apparently. You had volunteered.
I volunteered, but I didn't do 20 years. I only served for 12 years.
No, but 12 years is quite a long time to commit to the military.
Yeah, well, it was mostly Army Reserve and National Guard.
Did you come from a military family? I don't mean to pry.
Not at all. Well, actually, my two of my older brothers, they joined the military, one as an officer and became a career officer, and one as an enlisted man and came back as a sergeant.
Help me out here. You're Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico's in a unique situation vis-a-vis the United States. Were you a member of the United States Armed Forces? How does that work? What's the relationship between the United... I guess that's a larger question. Relationship between Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, and the United States of America. And how did it affect you in terms of your service in the American military? Or was it Puerto Rican? Or what's the situation there?
Well, Puerto Rico has been part of the United States since after the War of 1898.
But they weren't a state.
They're not a state.
It's a unique city.
It is an unincorporated territory.
It's not a commonwealth?
Yeah, it is a commonwealth. That's the... Well, it is and it is not. That's the translation for the Estado Libre Asociado, but it's not truly a commonwealth. And is a territory of the United States, but since 1917, Puerto Rican have been, people born in Puerto Rico have been U.S. citizens.
That's interesting. Is that unique? Are there any other peoples that are in that situation?
Yeah, there are.
You don't have that kind of a thing, say, with Cuba.
No, we don't, because
Cuba was also taken in the Battle of the Main with Theodore Roosevelt.
Cuba obtained their independence, even if it was under the supervision, even if it was a de facto protector of the United States. And that's one of the reasons the Cubans had the revolution in 1959. This trying relationship with the United States. Puerto Rico in 1890, when the United States intervened in the war with Spain in 1898, it was decided beforehand that Puerto Rico would be part of the United States. The same could not be done with Cuba because Cuba was much larger. They had a huge rebel army, and you know what happened in the Philippines when the United States took over the Philippines. They were engaged in what some people call the United States First Vietnam. In Puerto Rico, it was different because there wasn't a large rebel army fighting a war against the Spaniards. And when the United States invaded Puerto Rico to fight the Spanish forces during the War of 1898, they came in with Puerto Ricans who helped them. For the most part, Puerto Ricans actually aided the American invasion, and they work as scouts, as raiders, as
why
guides.
The difference, do you think? What was the history before that of the Puerto Rican reality?
So why Puerto Ricans didn't have the same as Cuba? Well, that is
an interesting relationship.
Well, like I said, some historians have pointed out to the fact that In Cuba, there was a larger merchant, or what we would call now a middle class, that actually could see that their future was better if they became independent. That didn't happen in Puerto Rico. That class developed slowly. So, but by the time the Cubans are fighting, they're supported by they're supported by revolutionary juntas, mostly in New York, and the plan is to liberate Cuba first and then liberate Puerto Rico. That didn't get to happen because the United States intervened in the war and stopped the war against Spain, right? So that I think that is one of the main differences. And the other, that the Americans use, the American military governors and military authority used to say is that Puerto Ricans were not fighting, which is not completely true, because once the United States invaded, many Puerto Ricans rose up in arms and they started to harass the Spanish forces and to join the Americans. And so many Puerto Ricans landed with the United States that Puerto Ricans were in fact fighting.
Yeah. It's really interesting. How long have you been, your people, your family, I don't know if you're able to or not, trace it back? And would your family trace back to Spain or the roots of the European example or population on Puerto Rico? It's got a Spanish background, or the country of Spain.
Well, on my father's side, it traces back to Corsica.
Corsica.
My last name is a Corsican
that's like
last name. My
Mediterranean.
on my mother's side, they trace it more to Spain. But everyone in Puerto Rico does that. But
Everybody does what?
Everyone wants to. I mean, a lot of people like to trace their origin to Europe. It has been recently that people are trying to realize that we may have European last names, but most of our roots, they trace back to Africa.
Is that, wait a minute, we got to spell that out a little bit, because that's a little unusual way of thinking and everything. You also have, we have a mutual friend, Robert Hernandez, Roger Hernandez, and he's Taino. And the people and the island of Puerto Rico is known as, we're going to talk about the Borincaneers, which is a military thing that I had some association with, you're familiar with and so forth. But that is off the term Borroco or something,
Borinca,
Borinca, the original name for the island of Puerto Rico, 100 miles by 35 miles, rectangular thing. And that was the Taino. Is that part of the Carib subgroup? It's a subgroup of the Carib or the Arawak. Indian peoples who inhabited there before Columbus came, is what I'm getting at, the Aboriginal population.
For the most part, there's really not a big distinction between Caribs and Tainos. They are more or less the same group.
Between Carib and Tarib, or what are Carib and Arawak?
No, Carib and Arawak. I mean, there's not that much of a difference. That's the latest scholarship.
Latest scholarship, because there's rumors and things about difference.
Yeah, and about cannibalism, and one's being more one group being more settled than the other being raiders.
Also, the thing that was done to the Aboriginal people by Columbus and his cohorts and everything was absolutely disgusting. Holocaust. Yeah. Horrible Holocaust. Well, it was like what happened in North America as well with the Aboriginal people by the European,
Yeah, but the main point is like this Taino revival in Puerto Rico has been going on for a long time now.
Is it it's an item of pride to be Taino?
It's about pride, but it's also about denying blackness, because in the Caribbean, denying blackness, because in the Caribbean, blackness is associated with slavery, and for good reason. And a way of escaping blackness is to claim that, okay, I'm darker than you, but it's because I have Indian ancestry. So that's why so many people to this day identify.
With black?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, they say if I'm mixed with, it's a mix of European and Indian, because the Indian is supposed to be noble, and the Spaniard is supposed to be civilized. Right? So a way of escaping blackness and the legacy of slavery is claiming that you belong to a native group.
With our colleague, what's her name again? She's coming. Our friend. It's
Noemi?
Noemi. She's coming later. We're hoping to get it in and everything. And she had a scene where they were dealing with the soldiers, and they made them take off their shirts
Yes.
and look at their back, whether or not they were white or were they black.
Exactly.
So that racism is something that's been part of the history that you have to deal with, right?
No.
Or the gradations of interest in racial backgrounds is important to the people in Puerto Rico in terms of their heritage and thinking or their consciousness.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
just like it's here
we in Puerto Rico we try to say that race is not important, that we live in a racial democracy,
Yeah.
but we know that really not to be true. You look at me, and all my life I've been identifying Puerto Rico as a white person, and I have come to understand the privilege that I get in Puerto Rico for being identified as a white person.
Is it also based on class? Do you have a family background? Do you have in the Spanish tradition they had
Yeah.
encomienda, and they had all kinds of courtly behaviors and courtly association, as they had in Europe, as they had the court system and the herald, you know what I'm
Definitely,
saying?
class
Class consciousness.
class does matter, of course,
Yeah.
And there's a pretty strict class stratification in Puerto Rico. I come from a working class background.
You're
and-
working class, Ken.
Yes.
You have the bearing of a nobility. Don't you think? Yeah.
thank you.
No, you don't. I would
No.
think. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I'm a good actor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's a good the thing that's going in the modern experience and everywhere. Well, I'm really glad you could come in. I'm glad you're a historian of the country. Will let the cat out of the bag, as they say, was in Puerto Rico. Myself as a young man, I was drafted into the United States Army, and I was stationed at Fort Henry Barracks at Cayey, and you would know Cayey.
Oh yeah.
And you know of the Fort Henry, the beginning of Naomi's film, back at the turn of the century, they were stationed at Fort Henry Barracks. That's where the original 65th was stationed, at Camp Henry Barracks at Cayey. I mean, she's got reference to it. Yeah.
It's a good place where to be stationed because, as you know, the origins of the 65th, they go back to 1899 when the first battalion of Puerto Rican volunteers is created.
Yeah.
And the battalion is created to help the military authorities to keep the peace.
Yeah,
In
right.
the
It was
island.
all Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's originally 400 men in 4 different places.
400, was it more? No?
No,
When it got to-
at first. No, I mean in 1899
got
it
to
was
about
3,000.
3,000.
Yeah,
The regiment.
when it becomes a regiment,
Yeah,
it's
right.
about 3,600 people, 3,600 people.
Right, yeah.
But it started with one battalion,
Yeah.
only 400 people. Then
And they were all Puerto Rican.
for the most part,
Yeah. I mean, they were
um,
prideful of that.
oh yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't any interlopers in from the continent or something like that.
Well,
Or they weren't, they had a pride in terms of it being the Puerto Rican nature of everybody in there.
yeah, and
They were all Puerto
the country felt pride had this pride on having this Puerto Rican regiment composed of Puerto Rican. But you got to understand that at first is Puerto Rican enlisted men and the sergeants and officers. At first, in the early years, they were continental Americans.
They were continental?
Yeah,
The officers?
officers and sergeants in the first few years.
And the
Then by
non-continental?
1904, I think the first Puerto Rican, there's already Puerto Rican NCOs,
Yeah.
and by 1904, the first Puerto Ricans start to be commissioned as officers.
Okay, yeah, right. Where did they go? Were there any Puerto Ricans that were at West Point?
Oh yeah, pretty early.
Trained as officers at West Point.
Yes,
We have a friend, Frank Medina. You know Frank?
I know Frank.
Frank's a good guy, I think,
Yeah,
And he's a good guy. I hope he helped put this thing together recently. And he was from the Point. Yeah.
yes.
And he's retired now.
He was instrumental in obtaining the Congressional Gold Medal for the Buccaneers.
Can we talk a little bit about that? And I want to fit it in because you have a more sweeping understanding of the military history of Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is a very, very important thing for us all to understand well because we have a close working association with the country of Puerto Rico, particularly for people here in New York City, where it seems every other person's from Puerto Rico, it seems.
At least.
At least? No, I mean, you know what I'm saying, yeah?
I know.
Yeah. So, so the military history, and this is a unit. What was the military history prior to the Puerto Ricaneers, or to the 65th, let's say? I
Okay.
mean,
Well, you know, we were talking about 1898,
Yeah.
and but Puerto Rico before 1898 had been, for the most part, a military colony for Spain. I mean,
It was a colony, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
it was a Spanish colony, and for the 3 centuries at least, actually for 4 centuries, the people who came to live in Puerto Rico and who came to be the Puerto Rican militias kept Puerto Rico Spanish, even when Spain was losing its colonies in the mainland South America and in Central America and Mexico, North America, right?
How were they able to do it there when they couldn't hold it out against other forces in other parts of the New World?
Well, it's in part it's because Puerto Rico had always been a military colony, and when they started, military service was really important, kind of like one of the main engines in Puerto Rican history. So when the Spaniards started to lose their American empire, they used Puerto Rico as a huge base from where to stage invasions of or the reconquest of South America.
I see,
So,
really. Yeah, I see.
and once and by the 1820s, when they lost their last colonies and they started to evacuate South America, those defeated Spanish officers, where do they go? They go to Puerto Rico, and they come and become a pretty conservative, pro-Spain element in Puerto Rican society. And little by little, what they do, what the Spanish authorities do, is like they start to demobilize the Puerto Rican militias to make sure that Puerto Rico doesn't go the same way that the rest of the rest of their American empire went. And little by and after this big revolution, El Grito del Área of 1868, which was put down by Puerto Rican militias, not by Spanish regulars, the Spanish authorities take the opportunity to disband what remains of the Puerto Rican militias. And all of a sudden, there's no more Puerto Rican militias. And maybe you know, even to this day, the National Guard in Puerto Rico, which was created in 1920 after World War I, they trace their lineage, not to other Spanish units, but they trace their lineage to the Puerto Rican militias that were disbanded after El Grito del Ares, after that insurrection. And so when the Americans...
So it's pretty unique, really. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty unique.
Yeah.
So, and that is one reason, that is one of the things that I argue in my forthcoming book, that the Americans, they didn't militarize Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was already militarized. What they did is they remobilized the masses, which have been demobilized by the Spanish authority to prevent insurrection.
Now, the 65th, was it unique? Was that one of a number of other military units? There were more military aspects to Puerto Rico than the 65th, but that was a major one?
The 65th
that people of Puerto Rico are proud of?
Well,
and perhaps happy to see this, which happened where they were just designated with the Congressional Gold Medal for a heroic action that had been misguided in a court-martial and so forth. The story of the 65th Buccaneers is one that's going all around the world now. Yeah,
I think it
could become the basis of a major motion picture.
I hope.
Frank thinks so. He could become like Saving Private Ryan or something.
Yeah, like
Saving Private. Because is there prejudice there with people out of the point or continental United States? Is there a prejudice? The prejudice is such an ugly thing. I hate it. There's prejudice. We had what they called slavery for Christ. How in the hell we were able to imbibe that slavery that we had in the South and in the United States? Slavery against people of black origin, African origin. I mean, prejudice.
Yeah.
And there's prejudice directed at every group that's come to. There was prejudice directed against the Irish when they came to New York. There was prejudice directed against the Portuguese. There was prejudice against everything. And there was prejudice against Latinos.
Yes, there was.
And Puerto Rico had a Latino bent. So there was a prejudice in the part of the American military or others against the Latino nature of the people who made up the country of Puerto Rico, like a prejudicial idea they had that they directed, and the fact that they had these people court-martialed was that as they did. 96 guys were general court-martial at the behest of somebody out of the. Was there was there racial prejudice directed against Latinos on the part of the American people?
Well,
or military forces or political class is what I'm trying to say in a way.
Well, one of the reasons Puerto Rico doesn't become independent in 1898 is that the political class in the United States and the military authorities who come to Puerto Rico, they basically claim that Puerto Ricans are not. There's not enough Puerto Rican capable of running a civil government,
Right,
so
right.
they install a military government, which, as you know, it just completely bananas because they had a civil government before, and they know how to work in a democratic, semi-democratic government. They had a type of parliamentary type of government
Right,
similar to
right.
what Congress. So they did, but the history of the 65th is unique, just as it is the history of Puerto Rico in the U.S. military, because they're serving in a military that doesn't really want them, doesn't really trust them, and they're not trusted or really
You mean by the
wanted.
Continentals, the Continental officers?
And they
class
were
in
not
that, yeah.
really wanted or trusted because of their
They're
ethnicity
lesser
and
people.
culture.
They're
Yes.
called lesser people.
Exactly.
That's called prejudice.
Yes.
It was prejudice, and so that's a lesson the world has to learn.
Yeah.
Then they haven't. And maybe we could just veer off a little bit to the thing of the. I'm wearing the badge of the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And that was the regiment. The unit was the 65th.
Yeah.
They were just honored by the United States of America, or they had been. And we had the other one, the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes.
That was honoring people of black people.
Black airmen.
Negroes, right?
Yeah.
They were there. Percy Sutton was a member of that, who had fought well and everything. They were honoring that. And then they did the Nissen
Then he say,
people
yeah.
who were Asian. And you see, it's this prejudice thing directed against cultures, you know.
Yeah.
And then they had, what was the other one? There was one, was a Mohican Indian. The Indian peoples.
the Navajo, the Navajo Tucker.
The quote broke the code that was so important in getting them, you know,
Yeah.
that. So they were recognizing the people who had been seen as lesser. They were at a prejudicial view against them. They were doing. Now they've done it for the Buccaneers and Puerto Rican, but in a certain sense, that's a recognition of the same sort of prejudice that we'd had against
Yeah.
the Latino community.
Yeah.
We have a Latino community that includes Argentina and Brazil and Colombia and a whole lot more than just Puerto Rico. But this is a singular thing that is that prejudice against Latinos by Anglos or by, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Isn't that not something that we're going to have to deal with collectively as a society, this stupid thing of prejudice by one group against another? And is the story of the Buccaneers perhaps illustrative of that particular transformation taking place within the human conditions we come into the modern experience, if you can follow all of that?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because all those.
Also, if I may, that's the stuff of a tremendous Hollywood blockbuster movie because it's such a big issue in terms of the evolving human condition, is getting over the prejudice and the military examples of where that was so clear. That's why Frank thinks it could become an issue, get to Mr. Spielberg or somebody to make a real big movie out of it because it will inform the human condition beyond just the immediate story, if you can understand what I mean.
Yeah.
That's the stuff of a major motion picture.
Yeah, it sure is. But
No.
there's actually major motion films on the experience of the Navajo Code Talkers.
Where? No.
Yes, there are. There are.
No,
films.
what? No, major motion. I'm talking about a major motion, a blockbuster, not just a picture or something to go on NBC or something, but a major picture like Private Ryan, or where they put the big time budget and everything, you know, and a major blockbuster could be made out of that film about the Buccaneers, possibly.
No, probably.
And,
Yeah.
and the other behind it, because not enough people understand how important the Tuskegee Airmen are. And that whole thing the world's going through are the stupid prejudices coming out of history that have been part of the historical experience that are going to have to be addressed. We got Black Lives Matter now. That's a big political movement now. Other things. We just had a guy kill a bunch of people down in, where was it?
Orlando.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. But I
Okay.
think he might be on with the idea that it could be the stuff of a Gone with the Wind.
Definitely.
Not just another motion picture.
Okay. No, I understand. It could be epic.
And if they do, they're going to need people who understand the military experience of Puerto Rico. And they got this guy, Frankie, who has some understanding of that, I think. This guy in New York.
Yeah.
His name is Harry Frankie something.
Yeah.
Rivera, who might be able to help in that regard.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and
we
your
can do
friends.
it.
Is there and your colleagues? You have colleagues in that field
Yeah.
of the military history of the
Yeah.
Latino area of the world, you understand?
Yeah, definitely. All of those stories, what they have in common is like this prejudice against non-whites,
Yes.
the distrust of
Yes.
non-whites. But they also have in
Huge.
common that for them to prove their value,
Yeah.
they had to fight for the right to fight.
Yeah.
Because at the time,
Good theme.
the
Yeah.
the way
a great
in
theme.
which you prove that you were as American and as important as anybody else was by being willing to fight for the nation. That's how you claim, and that's how you claim your piece of the nation that you belong. And that is exactly why the military, started in 1898, started to limit not just the role of Puerto Ricans in the military. They created that battalion, but that battalion is a colonial unit.
Yeah.
But they started to limit the role of African Americans in the military, who had always served in the military, and from being fighting unit, their units are disbanded or turned into labor, into work units, and they're not allowed to fight, because if they fight, then there are men like you and I, and then why do we?
It had only
why
been
do
a
we do
few years
anything?
before I went to Puerto Rico that Mr. Truman, I think it was Mr. Truman, who desegregated
1948.
the enlisted men
Yeah.
in 48.
Yeah.
They had black units and white units. And they finally broke that nonsense, in there. So that unit that I was in Puerto Rico in 1955 at Fort Henry Barracks was, thank goodness, was black and white. We didn't even pay any attention to it, and onward from there, But that's something that is just the history and so forth, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So the history, the Buccaneers is a story that's been in the news.
Yes.
Just recently, the last few months, because it was a major thing involving the president and the Congress and everything.
Yes.
Were you at the thing at Assembly Hall or at Emancipation Hall?
Emancipation Hall, yes, I
Were
was
you at
there.
that? Wasn't that that was an experience where they presented that officially. The whole Congress was there, the leadership of the Congress. Nancy Pelosi was there, and who's the guy from the presidential election?
Speaker Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan was there. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the whole leadership of the Congress, Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid and everybody, they were all there honoring the 65th.
I was really impressed with seeing
my
how many
unit.
people.
Except I have to make clear to you that I was not anyone who did that great fighting. I just happened to be occupying the barracks at the end of when it had already been abandoned by the guys who had done the fighting.
Yeah.
But it was still called the 65th. So I make it clear. I got the badge, but I didn't do the fighting.
Okay.
I didn't do that. I'm not claiming that I was any brave fighter or anything.
That
like
happens.
Yeah. But I am part of the 65th.
Of course.
I should wear the badge.
Definitely.
No, and I want to be associated with those guys. And I like Frank a lot. He's a good guy. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on.
No. So.
No.
I think I was really impressed with the people who show up, with the leadership that show up, with their words, how sincere they sounded, but I was even more impressed with how Puerto Ricans reacted to it, especially when the Army band played "En Mi Viejo San Juan."
Oh, that guy who was that that sang that?
I don't.
Oh, was
he was a
I was
sergeant.
crying, and I didn't even know the Spanish
That was
words.
my point, and everyone was
really
singing.
Good. It was really good.
And everyone was singing, and you could see that the
waving
Congress,
the Puerto Rican flag.
Yes.
Yes.
and the Congress leadership was so impressed. I don't think they ever seen anything like
They
that.
had the band and they had the chorus, and they gave it the full tilt boogie honor.
Yes.
And they were all there in a very important period of time. Now, the history of Puerto Rico, that's your bailiwick in a way, in particular with a particular understanding of the military history, right?
Yeah.
That's what you did. Your major, and you're with what now? You're with CUNY, I guess, right?
I'm with the Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College, CUNY.
Could I ask you about that?
Yeah, sure.
I went to that meeting they had after the meeting in Washington. My friend Maggie and I went to that along with Frank, and we went, and then they had a gathering at a college, or they had a gathering, and they had a lot about Puerto Rico.
At 119.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's uptown in the barrio somewhere.
Yeah, the Silverman School.
Yeah, right. And we went up there and it was part of CUNY.
Yeah.
And I went there and I was expecting maybe a small little thing with a few wooden desks or something. They got a great big building. They got a great big building as part of CUNY. And what is going on with CUNY? You're a part of CUNY now. Maybe
Yes.
you're inside of it. What's happened that it has grown so fast and so big? CUNY is everywhere. You've got a whole great big building there that's gone up. Brand new, modern, all the latest stuff and everything for the study of Puerto Rico. Do they have one for the study of Dominican Republic? Do they have one for the study of Haiti? Do they have one? And how can CUNY have been growing so fast? They must have 500,000-600,000 students.
Well,
CUNY,
that
it's a fantastic institution.
well, that building is not just for the Center for Puerto Rican Studies. The Center for Puerto Rican Studies has we have our archives there. The auditorium and those rooms, they teach classes. They're not part of us. We can use them. We can reserve them.
What I'm trying to
yeah,
say
no, I
is
know.
CUNY is an example for an urban university of tremendous growth.
Yeah, I think CUNY
I
has
mean-
about 20 campuses. It's
Yeah,
always been a.
It's like mushrooms growing up all over. Is there any other university, urban university, that's anything to rival what CUNY's been able? Who's running CUNY? Who's behind that growth?
Well, there's.
I mean,
there's,
do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah, no, I understand. There's many people, but CUNY.
It seems to me like a major thing that's going on.
Q-
Grogman's there now. He came there to the center on 34th Street with scholars. I mean, scholars are coming there
Yes.
rather than Harvard or Princeton or the advanced study or something. It's really a major center of learning and research and so forth that ought to be paid some attention to, and you're part of it.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that what CUNY is doing now is not a new thing. CUNY, since at least the 30s or the 40s, has been, the City University of New York has been a main engine for creating professionals who are going to stay in the city. It has been used by different groups, like it has been used by the Jewish community, by the Italian community, by the Puerto Rican community to gain access to higher education and to improve and give back to their community. So CUNY had always, I mean, there are over 20 campuses, I think, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and it's growing. It's going. They got the CUNY, right across from where we are. Did you happen to notice when you came in the door? Is the
John Jay.
John Jay College for Criminal Justice. They've got a whole avenue of that building. It's like inside. It's like an aircraft carrier. It was an institution. My hat is taken off to the growth. Whoever's behind that, politically and otherwise. Stanley Aronowitz is involved, I think, and some of the major scholars and everything like that.
CUNY is one of the main engines for good in this city.
Yeah. Okay. I just thought I'd like to know the story of that because it's very impressive and everything like that. So, welcome to MNN. This is television. Are you involved in any kind of way? You have a blog.
Yes.
Could you share what it is and how much does that take up your attention? Is that part of the way you're expressing yourself and your other work? You're doing other work, and what kind of work is engaging you now?
Well, I'm finishing 2 books. One on the 65, Another book is the experience of the Puerto Ricans under, in the Spanish military and the American military and what that meant for Puerto Rico, national identities, nation building.
Yeah.
I write often for the Huffington Post and for
it's a good blog,
Thank you. And for Central Voices, which is the electronic magazine of the Center for Puerto Rican Studies. And I also have my own personal blog, which I do on my spare time to kind of like my own therapy for topics that have not that much to do with my research, but that they attract me, and I right there from military matters to current politics, whatever is going on, I blog there. And those blogs, I usually put that in my blog first, Incoherent Thoughts, and then I publish in.
Incoherent, did you say?
Yeah, but space coherent.
That's clever.
Incoherent Thoughts.
Have you got that trademarked?
Yeah.
Have you got your lawyers on that solid? Or your trademark?
Well, I bought the domain.
Incongruent. That's pretty clever. Yeah, incoherent. I mean, that's funny. Yeah, but I like funny. Yeah.
So I put them there. I put them there first on my blog, and then I put them on the Huffington Post.
Huffington is a really major one. Speaking of which, now we're talking about education and everything. How do you feel? You're young. How do you feel about the educational potentiality for? Well, you got these posts, you got these blogs. Do you use Twitter? Do you understand it? Do you understand the social media? Do your colleagues understand it? The educational potential of all the electronic media in terms of, well, they begin to have, like we're singing the praise of CUNY.
Yeah.
As they're for a university, right?
Oh yeah.
But then there's all these other things in the electronic sphere that have educational potential. Wikipedia just knocks me out. There's so much interesting stuff, and you and your colleagues, you're younger coming along. Aren't there sources of learning that are available to us that are just absolutely incredibly important in a way that there never has been? When I was young, we were middle class. My dad was a lawyer and everything, and we had the Encyclopedia Britannica. Next to the you'd have the what do you call it, what do you call it when you got the fireplace and everything, the mantle, and we had Big Ben ringing out, and they had and we had the Harvard Classics, and you had those, you had that a few things, books, but now you've got this incredible capability of just drawing upon the knowledge of the world and the research in the world, and what is the thinking of the younger scholars coming along? I'm older. But to take advantage of, and what are the implications and the way in which that can be expanded to greater numbers of people to seriously address the issues that confront mankind?
Well, it is interesting that you say that, because that's one of the reasons I started blogging. I tweet.
Yeah. You do tweet.
Yeah, I do Twitter. I tweet often. Whenever I post a blog, I tweet it. I put it.
That's just part of your life.
Yeah.
See, I don't know how it works.
It's a way of me of reaching a different audience.
Okay, and you're familiar, and you know how to do it. Do you try and reach when you're dealing with when you're a scholar, you got students.
Yeah.
And you got students you know for the rest of your life. Sometimes
Yes.
you got really good. You have a way of communicating with them.
Yeah.
So there are ways of communicating with your colleagues and student colleagues, if you understand what I mean. A body of things that you're able to take advantage of, and that's encouraging that these things are developing. These electronic ways of being in touch.
Social media is a powerful tool to amplify your message, and one of the reasons I started doing the blogging is that for me there is a difference between information and knowledge, and there's so much bad information in the internet. And I noticed that years ago I started to notice that my students, they would take whatever they found from the internet and they would take it as knowledge.
Gospel,
and,
right.
And that's one of the reasons I started blogging, to actually put out there something that has the right information and it has knowledge.
It's got right information according to your lights.
No, well.
You understand? So everybody thinks their lights is right, and there are people who, you understand.
But there are things, there are things that can be corroborated, like dates, names, and then even I had this experience with many students bringing me trying to write their papers in the last minute and going to the internet and not checking their sources, and everything that they got was wrong. Like basically, like putting Montezuma in Argentina, things like that. You know.
Montezuma.
Yeah, Montezuma. Yeah.
He wasn't in Argentina.
No, Mexico.
No, I don't think. Was he in Argentina?
No.
He never got down there even. Right? Never even visited.
I mean.
Now that's a wrong thing.
No, that's.
So
I'm sorry, and I was wrong there too, but.
No, I'm making a joke.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
making a joke.
I know.
but it's illustrating the fact that you can have bad information be getting out too. Mr. Trump just built his whole campaign upon being able to use that social media like a champ. It's a way of communicating, and for political reasons or for educational reasons, they have a great potentiality.
No,
Yeah.
definitely.
Is it being adequately understood, I wonder, by our political class or our intellectual leadership class? Or who are they anymore? We used to have the political leadership class would be in various fields. The educational challenge is with the universities, and now you got these other institutions that are coming in with blogs and things. Michio Kaku's a fellow at CUNY.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, he's a physicist.
I don't
Leading edge
know.
physicist, string theory, Brian Greene, and they're communicating to people on within the electronic media as well as books and everything.
Yeah, it's a
But-
way of reaching a different audience, but when you do it, you have to write differently.
That's something that maybe is worth doing. For one thing, what do you think? Do you think the fact that you've got all this, there was the guy who did that. Who was the one who did all the? Damn it, I can't think of it now. The great cyberneticist. I forget who it was. It may come to me in a little while. But his dad was in the room with him when they coined the term cyber. It means steersman,
Yeah.
like a steersman in Greek, right?
Yeah.
But they did, and he knew about the implication of the computer, and it's coming exponential. The capability for information
Yes.
is coming, not arithmetic. It's coming exponential and everything. And he said it permits. We're getting there's the term information overload.
Yes.
There's too much information coming. Some of it's good, some of it's not. Who's moderating what's good and bad? What are the guiding principles that are in terms of the overwhelming amount of information we're coming to have access to as a species, right?
Yeah.
How is that whole process being understood? And what are the implications of it? But they said information overload permits pattern recognition. Rather than seeing the specializations, instead of seeing like a Degas painting, instead of looking at the dots, you see the overall painting. You can see connection between the various. You said we're going to talk about Puerto Rico, but you want Puerto Rico to be in a larger context of historical understanding and so on. You can see patterns better. You can see patterns between. Does it allow for pattern recognition and comprehensive systems thinking more? Or maybe we're off onto something that is maybe I'm just getting off on something that is not. I just think it's really important to understand information and how is the public consciousness developing a sense of what's right and what's wrong, what's true, what's not.
There's no
in a welter of information and conflicting ideas.
I don't think there is a way to directly moderate
You understand
what
the
what you
question,
what you
yeah.
find there. I think the best way to moderate what people find as valuable and as something to be trustworthy in the internet is by
Trial and error.
but no, actually, it's by working on our education system. So when people go to look for sources X or Y, they already have an act for differentiating between what is good and what is not completely legit. And for that, what they need is a solid education.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think the education encourages that?
Yes, I mean education which they're able to identify what can be constructed as knowledge, because information and knowledge are not the same
Well, I
thing.
know, but the other thing is, one of the things that makes possible is for extreme specialization. Everything seems to be breaking down into component parts. The degrees are not on big issues.
Yeah.
The systems thinkers seem to be vanishing. I mean,
Yeah.
people who are thinking about whole system, they'll get one part of a system and concentrate on that and become very highly specialized
Yes.
with the ability to do that. Now you can spend a whole life on one aspect of a virus that's part of a Dukakis thing or something. It's getting more specialized, or not. You don't see.
Yeah, people. Yeah, I think people are
Where are
over
the systems
specializing.
thinkers? The people
Well,
who are thinking about everything.
That's why we need better general education.
You think
And
general education
better better.
You don't think the educational process is encouraging specialization?
No, that's
Because
that's
you
what
want
I.
to get a certificate that's going to let you do something, maybe where you can make a better material.
No,
life
I
for
agree with you.
yourself.
That's
You
what I
understand
said. That's
I'm
what I
saying?
said that we
It's
need
becoming
better.
job
Yeah.
training or something.
Yeah.
Or what do you think?
No, I agree with you. That's what I said that we need better general education to put more trust in the humanities, to actually give students who go to university a universal education
Well, how about
as
people who don't
opposed.
even go to the university? You don't have to
Yeah.
go to the university. If you've got
Yeah.
all this information, it's available to us all, is it not? Or it can be. What's up on the what's out on the in the existing, I don't know what you call it, but it's the availability, electronic availability of information is just almost, you don't have to go to any university. You can have the best thinking available to you increasingly without having to go to a university to sit and listen to somebody who maybe doesn't know it that well or isn't able to have real peer review with other people that do it. You can bypass maybe the ineptitude of a lot of the people who claim to know what they're talking about and they don't.
Well,
Maybe.
on-
Or they're
I
all
don't think-
caught up in specialization.
I don't think so. Online university have a poor record of graduating, a poor graduation record. They actually leave off getting students to try and get a degree, and most of them never finish it. They get federal funding. They use even many of our veterans are going. It's easier for them to go through an online university. Many of them they don't get to finish, or if they get to finish, their degree is not that valuable.
Well,
And
the
so,
valuable
yeah.
is, if I may, you get a degree or you get a certification from some institution that you know something. I guess you know how to do heart surgery, or you know how to do something. You get somebody who knows how to certify, and then that allows you to go and get what they call a job.
Well,
Where the more specialized it is, the more you're valuable.
yeah, but I
It's a
think
market-oriented thing that seems to be motivating so much of the intellectual exercise as a way of getting a better living standard or more money by being highly specialized. I don't
Well,
know. Maybe
maybe.
I'm off base.
well, maybe.
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe. Yeah, it might not be something to develop. What are the important questions that are confronting mankind? Let me ask you a philosophical question, if I may. Okay? Are you optimistic or pessimistic for the human prospect?
Well, I guess that depends on the day, but mostly,
Okay, well said.
mostly
yeah.
I'm optimistic for the most part. I have children, and
Yeah, you have a boy that's going to have a
yeah.
baseball game today.
I have a boy and I have
You
a
get to
girl,
that,
so
yeah, a girl, yeah.
I have to think that we can create a better world.
Yeah, so you're optimistic.
Yes, I would say that. I understand it doesn't happen just by wishing it happens. That you have to work for it.
Do you feel that we live in an unusually pregnant moment in the evolution of events in the universe?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. That you are asking me that because I think when Barack Obama was elected, this country started to fight a civil war that is not being fought with rifles and two opposing armies, the Union and the Confederate, but it's being fought on cultural grounds, and it's being fought on a Congress that has opposed every measure he wanted to pass. And I think that mostly due to this cultural war that it has taken over the political scene, we've been engaged in a civil war since he was elected.
Do you think there's something? Go ahead.
He was not accepted by a large part of the political establishment.
Yeah, you had that whole Tea Party thing.
Yes,
no?
definitely. So
Yeah.
you could
Know
say that,
nothing,
and
in
we're
my
a,
view.
and we're I mean, right after he was elected, Homeland Security warned that white supremacist group and anti-government militias would increase their numbers, and some outlets out there and some political figure, they forced Homeland Security to retract that report, and guess what happened? They actually increased their numbers, and why would that happen? I mean, force Homeland Security to retract its own reports, and when they were right, we've been fighting a type of civil war since Barack Obama was elected, because he was not recognized as the president of the United States by a huge part of the country, including a large part of our political establishment.
Yeah, of the establishment.
Yeah, we haven't been fighting it with bullet, not yet, or not directly, but there's been a civil war going on. So this is a crucial moment for what is going to happen with the United States in the future.
Well, the future's coming pretty fast now. We got an election coming up now.
Yes.
We're going to have an election coming up, aren't we?
Yes.
And what are the important questions confronting it? What could the intellectual community be considering that is really important in terms of surveys or something like that? What's the status of the material well-being of the population of the world in terms of is there any way we could get some sort of a definition of what it means to be a have in material terms, not spiritual terms, but in material terms? Is it possible to get a reading? You're a historian, so you get a sense of history, a historical sense of what percentage of the world population can be seen to be what is called a have
and have
as
not,
opposed to a have not. And that would be something that would differentiate over the time, because there are things that are becoming available to, and how do you define what that means, particularly in historical and evolving terms, to be a have? And then could there be any census taking or reading of the overall capability that would be measuring the percentage of the world population given emerging capabilities? Like there was a time when we didn't have any running water.
Yeah.
We had to have water running. There was a time when you couldn't get a warm bath. I would commit that being able to have running water is something that's part of a have way of being for a human being.
Yes.
It couldn't have happened in 1700. You had to bring a bucket at a time. You now got water running for everyone. It becomes a standard that is available and being made available to everybody. That would be one aspect of what would be a have. Or you could get the other things that make up for a have way of being. And then the percentage of the population that are able to enjoy the state-of-the-art technological capability of providing life support in a way that is in keeping with the criteria of what it is to be a have. Is that percentage going up over time?
No, I think that
Taking the whole world into account.
There has been many advances in the world in the past decades, but at the same time that we're having many technological advances and more regions of the world get water, as you mentioned, or electric power, income inequality has reached levels unseen since the era of the robber barons. So, not just in the U.S., in which income the middle class has been shrinking, and
You're
more people.
talking now United States?
Yeah, I'm talking the world, but I'm going to say with the U.S. We've been talking, we've been studying how in the U.S. and in Puerto Rico the middle class has been shrinking. It's right for the past couple decades, and instead of joining the upper class, they instead of expanding or joining the upper class, they're being. The middle class has been shrinking, and income inequality has been growing. Yeah, I mean, most economists would agree that a country without a healthy middle class is not a healthy country.
And it is challenged, isn't it now? I mean, it has been challenged since 2008. We had that thing. We have the problems with the economy and everything. We don't realize the terms by which greater percentage of the population can be seen to be have and what could be done. and that we're not. Let's say you have a capability to do it, but we don't have institutions that let us do the good things we're able to do for everybody because we're tied in to outdated ideas coming out of history. We have a rendezvous with a better world that's coming, and we don't have institutions that let us realize that because we don't have the thinking that would lay the groundwork for doing what it is we're fully capable of doing in a positive way for expanding the number of people who have access to a way of life.
I think
it's a policy thing.
I think that part of our global economic system is that is not part of our global economic system. It's not designed that way. It is designed to make people feel good about having a little bit of access to water, a roof, but it's mostly designed about having people feel good about having certain commodities, even if they spend most of their income in on a flat TV or a new radio.
Yeah, but on a flat TV, they could have a great movie about the Puerto Ricans.
Yeah,
it's educational.
They may, but that doesn't cure poverty.
No, it doesn't cure. Yeah, right. And that's a big problem. Yeah, that's a big problem that exists. We have to understand it. Well, I'm sorry to bring you up a question like that right at the very end because we're running out of time, and it's sort of just dangling there. What it is, whether or not you're. I think we got a great capability in evading. We got a capability for killing people.
Yes.
We got a capability to wipe out, I believe, with the weapons the whole species.
Oh yeah.
That's a capability. Do you think that's?
They're
doing research on. Is that really the case? If they were to unleash the weapons, it would be the end of the species.
Well, I think we have the capacity, the capability to destroy the world many times over.
Not destroy the world.
I think that the human race would survive in some kind of way. After a nuclear winter, I mean, it's going to be catastrophic. I mean, I'm just guessing here. I mean, it may be that we actually.
But
we could actually make it happen.
We got 30 seconds at the end of the program. You're supposed to have a complete answer with all the footnotes. You don't have it immediately here.
I don't think there is a complete answer.
Maybe do another program sometime to talk about this with some of our colleagues, okay?
Definitely.
Anyway, I thank you very much for coming in to the program. I want to make sure you get out of here. You've got a baseball appointment with your 9-year-old
Yes, I do.
son, and I want you to keep that for sure. And it's your pleasure to have the perceptions then of it's Harry Franqui-Rivera.
Rivera.
That's a very good name, and I thank you for all the good work, and I appreciate it very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks for having me here.
Your pleasure to have his perception. Invite you to tune in. We're coming back again tomorrow. That's it for now. Thank you, Frankie. Do you mind, Frankie? I got a dear friend of mine, Frankie.
Everyone calls me that, Frankie.
Frankie's a great, good name. Okay, and thank you for coming in. And the audience, please stay tune in again tomorrow. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. Once more, Frankie, beginning of a beautiful friendship. Really nice talking to you.
Definitely. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye for now. Wait, we got 2 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you can now start talking.
Okay.
I'm making a joke. Okay. Here we go. We got to go fast. We got to get Naomi.
Okay.
To be shitty way, I could not put it last late about it.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. We'll do without it. We got it. Above all else, we got to get the other thing going. All right, that's good. Get out of here. Get out of here. We'll be sending you everything. We got to go really fast. She's here, you know?
Yes.
Come quick. We got to go really fast. Come on. I know we got to go really fast.
Did you not start on time? ¿Cómo estás?
Should we have the same back?